1 million species are at a threat of extinction. What we are witnessing right now is the sixth mass extinction. And the last thing that it happened was when we lost the dinosaurs. That's 65 million years. It's like global boiling. It's not even global warming anymore. It's not climate change. It's climate crisis. You really cannot try to grow infinitely on a planet that has got finite resources. We realized that we needed to work on the waste management bit of it and the war footing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tiny Farm Friends podcast. Our guest today is Utsow Pradhan. He is the founder of TIEEDI, an environment conservation organization based in Darjeeling, India. I can say with full conviction that TIEEDI was the place that inspired us to, start Tiny Farm Lab and what it is today. So thank you for inspiring us. And also thank you for joining us on the podcast today. And I would like to start by congratulating you for all the film nominations that TIEEDI has got globally on the film festivals. And that also segues to the question that I have in mind is, although it is a very cliche question, what is TIEEDI and what happens at TIEEDI?
First of all, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this podcast. And it's, heartwarming to know that TIEEDI has lit a fire in someone's heart to kind of follow the alternative lifestyle. To answer your question, well, TIEEDI, I think the way that we had envisioned it is firstly to come up as a forest garden, not really a farm. Don't really even like the word farm because, so the very practice of how we farm itself is now that we understand the root cause of where we are heading to. So we like the concept of a forest garden, more of a horticultural thing. And apart from that, I think the idea is not just to kind of create things in isolation, but to create it as a community center, experiential eco-learning center. So that's why we are open to volunteers, we open to guests, and also we open to our community in itself. So that was like the major, I think the primary goal of the setting up TIEEDI. And then over the years, we've been pretty flexible for the land itself to kind of show us the way as to where our focus areas would be. And while doing that, we realized that zero waste is one of our key focus areas because that was one of the initial projects that we started working on, because this place was, a dump yard, and lack of a better word, I would say it was molested for over 2 decades before we started nurturing it back into rainforest here.
Right. So, before we get dig deeper into what were the events that you led to start TIEEDI, I would love to know about the philosophy behind the name TIEEDI, because I know it sounds pretty interesting, but never heard from you directly what made you name it that way.
So, actually, we don't give it out too easily. We play a riddle with everyone who comes in here because people are very curious. It's the first time that they're listening to a word that they've never heard before. So we are proud of the fact that we invented the word TIEEDI. So, however, the genesis of this particular word is a documentary that it kind of influenced me during the initial years of this transformation that was going on in my head as to what all ideas should I subscribe for in living a life that I'm going to be proud about at the end, right? So this documentary is called Ancient Futures, Learning from Ladakh. It's based on a book by Helen Nordberg from Sweden. And in that, they kind of try to explore the idea of whether the modern consumerist society or the modern way of living has actually led to more happiness or discontentment. So there is this old man that they're interviewing, and he seems happy. So he seems like really content, and he's out threshing his paddy. And while he's doing that, what happens is the interviewer asks him, saying, "Hey, what is the song that you sing?" He says it's an ancient folk song that we sing when we harvest, and it translates. The translator says it translates into "Take it easy, easy does it." So that line really, really caught my attention. Take it easy, easy does it. Basically encapsulates our philosophy of how we want to go about it. Because even though we might be sometimes tackling one of the world's most pressing issues of climate change and the global boilings and all of that. So, but unless and until we learn to kind of take it easy, and as in permaculture that we say, slow, measured steps, and then you accelerate as and you move forward. And if you have to translate it into Hindi, you'd say that, okay, आराम से करो आप, आराम से करोगे तो सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा.
Super interesting. And I think even on our journey of building the cob house, I mean, we've somehow faced with like really complicated situations, or as humans, we made it complicated by trying to either do it like in an accelerated manner. And we've often thought about this concept and always like went back to like remembering TD for this thing. And this is some philosophy I would definitely like to like carry on. And as you mentioned that the land maybe showed you the way. And so right now, TD as an organization, it's like the flag bearer of doing so many things. Like you've converted this whole zero waste village. You're doing holistic waste management. There were homestays. But when you started that place, so what was your vision? Did you already have this vision in mind, or did it evolve organically? So can you help me trace the evolution of TD, how you imagined it and how it has become now?
I think it has evolved organically over the years because initially when I started off, it was more like, for me to fulfill some of my deep set desires that I wanted to kind of, experiment with. Like I always wanted, I don't know why. This is even before getting initiated into the permaculture journey. I always wanted a mud house. So I don't know why the thing about a mud house was really stuck in my head. So when we first started the project here, the first thing that we did was the mud house that we call the TD earthy dwelling. And we did it in a very rudimentary way where, got bamboo, and we didn't even know that it had to be treated, and, or we didn't know how to treat it. And so we thought, okay, let's put it in the ground, and we put it in the ground. We worked with the local artisans to kind of do a few of the stuff, but mostly it was like, just wanting to see a structure quickly, and so that so then so we built the mud house, and it became surprisingly very popular, even in its very rudimentary way. And we knew that it would not last long. It's the way that we did it was not for longevity. It was more out of like that passionate love to build something from the place that was there. And we kind of, once we built it, then we were like, hey, maybe people will also like to come and stay here. So we put it up in Airbnb and a few places, and people got drawn to that particular image of TD earthy dwelling, and they started coming to stay here, which is very surprising, especially for my mom, because she was the one who was worried the most when she was like, so what are you going to do after you come back from Hyderabad? Because I was in Hyderabad for like 12 years or so, my last stint there. So, and I was like, okay, I'm going to see what I'm going to do. So they all expected me to come back, and with all that experience, start up like an eco resort and get a crane and level the land and do all that stuff. But when she saw me actually getting more tree cover done, not leveling the land, even stopping whatever road that came into the land, like, so no cars inside, she got shocked. So for her, it was like, my son has gone bad because one, he's building a mud house in the middle of like nowhere, and from where you can't even see Kanchenjunga. So here the notion is, if you can't see Kanchenjunga, people will not come and stay. So it was like double whammy for my mom. One, there's no view of Kanchenjunga where he's building, and second, he's not even building a resort, he's building a kacha ghar. So when people are coming and staying and liking the experience, and in fact, within a couple of years, ranking us as the #1 specialty lodging in the whole of Darjeeling on TripAdvisor, she was like maybe very pleasantly surprised. So that's when we kind of also started attracting a lot of designers, architects, and sort of came, and we did another air dwelling, and so then more people started coming in. So, and why the focus was also on dwelling was, I think I've inherited my dad's passion for building. Even though he builds with concrete, I build more with mud and stones and bamboo. But I think I've inherited, I did not even know that I had this very strong desire to build. So, and as and when we started getting better into doing these natural buildings, we realized that we did not depend on any outside source of funds, because then we started this regenerative tourism that we call this project, where we had people come in either as tourists or volunteers and stay, and then add value to the place, and also go back a little nudged into alternative
Right.
living. So, and that helps us sustain the whole project as such. And then while working with the land from the very initial days itself, we realized that we wanted to really solve this waste management crisis that was we initially thought it's in our community. Once we started working on it, started to learn how to compost ourselves and segregation and all of that, we realized, oh, it's not just a community problem. It's a city problem. Like, whole of Darjeeling does not know how to do this.
Right.
I never met anyone here in my hometown who knew how to compost. Right? So and then you get into it, then you start working with the potters, and you start working on building a catalyst and for people to ease them, or making it easy for them to do simple waste management. And then you realize it's not just a Darjeeling problem. It's a very widespread problem. And then you think it's just an India problem, a so-called third world country problem. But then you kind of get into
Right.
it, and you realize, no, it's a massive problem. Like, the global north actually been practicing waste imperialism, which is even a bigger problem. So it's like getting into one realization after another. And we realizing that if we are able to apply the principles of permaculture, we should be able to launch very simple solutions that is able to solve the seemingly complex everyday problems that we see around us.
I mean, that is quite interesting and actually an incredible feat, because I've been living 2 years in Rishikesh right now in the remote village, and the biggest challenge I face is disposing of the waste. Even though the village has only 6 houses, I still haven't figured out a way to manage waste, because the nearest motorable road is 2 kilometers away, and that is something I would definitely like to work on and seek advice separately. And
Sure.
so your idea of creating this system, which is decentralized and holistic waste management, so if you could throw some light on that, what do you mean by creating these decentralized solutions?
So I realized that, the more you centralize it, so one, you need a lot of money to do that. Okay. And second, even if you have the money and you try and solve this problem by saying, everyone give your waste to the municipality, and the municipality takes it to a processing center, and invariably the solution will kind of is nicely sugar coated as waste to energy, but invariably it would mean that you're burning. Right? So, which amongst all people who have been working on the waste management know that it's a false solution. It's not really a solution that should be adopted, and it's not really a solution that helps to kind of solve the problem. So then the question was that, how do you solve it? So then we realized that if that is the case, then maybe every individual could contribute towards solving it at their level. And then from the individual, we'll move on to the community level. Maybe a community could come together and say that, can we also be zero waste? So that's where our thought process began. And of course, we were influenced by and inspired by a lot of great projects that were going on across the world. In India, I personally visited Trivandrum, because for me, once I started hitting the ceiling of how things could be done, or how much we could innovate, and I started getting bumps in my head saying that, oh, I don't know what to do now. So then I was like, simple Google search, typing in zero waste village, zero waste city, India, then Trivandrum came up. At some point of time, I think the United Nations had done some project and ranked it as the first zero waste city in India and stuff. So I actually started talking to my folks in the network and saying that, hey, how is this? Can I go and visit? Can you introduce me to people who have been doing this? So thankfully, yeah, I got introduced to the people who were responsible for it. I actually traveled down then to Hyderabad, Trivandrum, Bangalore, to try and see and understand the best practices. I got hosted by the municipality there, spent a lot of time picking on their brains as to how they were doing, what they were doing, and then got inspired that there was a city in India that had stopped collection of waste. Okay, from the government level. So everyone had to compost at, I'm not sure, I think it's the same still now, that everyone has to compost at the household level. And your non-biodegradable waste is then routed to a service provider, okay, who's based locally and who comes once in a week to kind of go pick it up and, takes it to a facility that is known as a materials recovery facility. And then you kind of start working on generating revenue to be able to make that sustainable. So that was the basic, the first inspiration that happened. And then we built on it. And then we kind of, I started reading more about it, started understanding that, okay, it also brings the community together when they take ownership of it. So that's how the journey started.
So nobody talks about the nuances of, building such an enterprise or an environment organization, conservation organization. So if I'm correct, you started by registering it as a private company, right? So what was in your mind while doing that? And secondly, as you said, you later had to form an NGO. So I just wanted to understand, like, how did you go about it? Because I also faced that dilemma of, like taking the private route or taking the NGO route. And I'm sure many such organizations who want to take up this path might think about that.
Sure. So initially, you see, my thought process was that, if I have to do something that is close to my heart with regards to, my own entrepreneurial journey, then I didn't want to depend for funds from outside, so it should be built on its own steam was the initial thought process. And that's what we did. So it was like, at an operational profit mode by about the first year itself. And it took us another like 2-3 years for us to get an ROI, a return of investment on what we had initially, put in the capital as. But then the journey of like, doing something for yourself. And even though, it is something that is adding value to society and, it is regenerative, it is based on the principles of permaculture and all of that. Even with that, you tend to then think that, okay, how much do you want to take it up to? Or what is the progress that you want to do? So on that, I was okay for it to progress slow because, like, and even now when people are, it's been 6 years that you just have like 3 huts and like, for us, it's art, right? And it takes time. So with regards to the huts. And we didn't really just want to be a homestay or a retreat or resort kind of thing. So there are multiple other things that we got our hands into. So we were okay. It's been a slow journey, and the private limited organization with all the auditing that is required, and you to be able to kind of ensure that you run it with the best practices that is required, right? From what kind of work environment do you create? What kind of employee benefits that you provide to the people there and stuff? So, going through all of that, we were okay to kind of go slow. We were happy with the journey until we realized that we needed to work on the waste management bit of it on a war footing. So it's like global boiling. It's not even global warming anymore. It's not climate change. It's climate crisis. So, and when we realized that, okay, when you have to kind of work on a war footing, that's when you would require a certain amount of capital from outside to get you a head start. And we looked around and we didn't honestly see any company or an organization practicing waste management, okay? Not just here, but across India in the way that we wanted to do it. So that's when we thought that, okay, let's get beyond ideation. Let's take this hypothetical idea from our head of how we want to do it, and let's pitch it to, like, a CSR partner who might be interested to invest their a CSR funds to do a social enterprise. And that's when we got to know that they are more comfortable. They are partners, who invest into private limited organizations. Oh, there are some who only prefer private limited organizations, but there are others who want to work with an NGO. So we registered an NGO, and it's been now a couple of years that we are registered as an NGO, and we started pitching this idea of managing waste a little differently. I'll touch upon that in terms of how we are looking to manage it. But the idea of saying that we want to take ownership of waste management in a place like Darjeeling that has had a couple of decades of government apathy towards solving this problem. And so once I think our idea was validated with DCB Bank kind of coming on board as a partner, we realized that we should be open to kind of work based on what are your goals. So it's like, where do you want to work at? How do you want to work at? So for every individual or every community, it's different. So once we realized that, okay, we wanted capital, we wanted to kind of scale it up and quickly. So, which is against, I think, how I started off. But then I realized that if I just take it on a slow way, saying, okay, it's okay, 2 households a year, 3 years, we're getting swamped with waste. We're getting even though we don't, for me, the personal experience was planting the 600 trees in TIEEDI. I thought I could breathe in good air. But then the moment that I opened my window in the morning, especially in winters, I could feel the stench of plastic burning in the village. And which was very disconcerting, because you've done so much and you really can't, divide air, saying that, okay, within TIEEDI, let this be the air. And air, water, and soil is part of this ecology that you are, joined together with. And you are joined with the community. You don't want to kind of also be away from the community, saying that, hey, I want to be and do this alone. So that's when we realized that the scale has to increase, the urgency has to be increased. And then we started getting aspiration. And we started getting aspiration to a very surprising extent, to surprise us, saying that, now let's target that. And so then that's how, the whole journey began of a private limited or an NGO and stuff. So yeah, so based on what your goals are, what your need is at that particular moment, I think it's okay to be flexible with that.
Interesting. Thank you for being so transparent about it and sharing the insights. So I am sure you might have a lot of lessons when it comes to human psychology. So what are some of those lessons? What made the locals change? Because you can't always fight human nature. So how did you go about that?
I think one of the first realization is that, like you mentioned, you can't change people. People change. You can't change people. I think that notion is false narrative when you say, okay, I'm going to change my community, because you can't. What you can do is you can facilitate their process, or you can even accelerate the process of changing themselves. So for us, we never took the moral high ground. We never said that, we do it right here, you do it wrong there, or, this is the best way to farm. Farming is even wrong. This is should be this way, you should mulch. And we were just continue doing what we were doing. People were curious. We kind of started sharing what we wanted to share. And because we had set it up also as an eco-learning center where the communities can come and kind of exchange ideas and learn. And we were also working with schools and colleges. The idea spread. A lot more people who got curious. And I think that's important, to make people curious about what you're doing and to practice what you want to talk about. So I think that worked initially. And then later, the idea was, how do you make it win-win? So how do you make it as such that people don't have to think about, oh, if I have to do this, I have to pay money, or if I have to do this, I have to spend money and stuff. So how do you make it seem that a certain behavioral change will also bring about a return of investment for that particular change that you invested in? So that was important for us, and that's something that we've practiced, and we've been fairly successful with that.
Interesting. And you've always been an advocate of this concept called gross national abundance, if I'm right. And how is it different from gross domestic product?
So, it's a no-brainer. The only way that you can sustainably grow is to degrow. You really cannot try to grow infinitely on a planet that has got finite resources, right? And our whole idea of growth is based on the fact that the very term that you use, gross domestic product, if you look at, switch on your television in the morning and go to, any channel, like a business channel, they'll be talking about those numbers flashing up and down, and they'll be talking about the number of cars that's bought, or number of properties that's bought, and this sector doing this well, this sector. And it's all based on the fact that how much people are spending. So, it's kind of ridiculous when you kind of look back at it now as to how I was also part of the same crowd. I was like hoping the stock market goes up and up and up so that I get more returns on my investment and all of that. But it is such a foolish concept to think that it's going to be growth to infinity. It cannot. Right? So, and at some point of time, it's going to be a simple question: at what cost? Right? That it seems again like, how do people reconcile the fact that, let's say, they are staying in a flat that has costed them 3 crore rupees in the national capital region of India, and they are staying on, let's say, the 10th floor, let's say the 20th floor. It's a plush apartment, all the amenities and all of that. And as soon as you kind of step outside, you can't breathe because air is not breathable. And inside, you can breathe by adding on to the pollution, by using an air purifier. It's mind-boggling. And then you step out, you can't drink out of any of the taps that's there. You have to buy water that's there in a bottle. So you can't breathe the air, you can't drink the water. And you try growing anything in the soil that's around you, it's going to be toxic, right? Because there's so much of toxicity that's there. So you can't breathe, you can't drink, and you can't grow. How is it then you call yourself a rich person? So it is like, how? And then, whereas here, even though with the challenges, with what we are working on, every time I come back even from Siliguri or even went down Darjeeling back to TIEEDI, and I take in this deep breath, I can feel the difference, and I can bring the water straight out of the tap because it's coming from my nearby stream that is connected to a wildlife forest or a wildlife reserve. So I know that it's pure water, the actual mineral water. And I know that the land that we are working on and the soil that we're nurturing, what we're preparing, is pure. May not be in its purest form because of the state that we found it in, but it's far, far better than anywhere else. And whatever little that we do is something that we are absolutely sure that is good for the body. So when you take all of these things into account, then you realize that then how do you measure growth? So then for me, growth started making more sense when you look at it from how abundant is the diversity around you. So if you have to, let's say, compare village A versus village B, let's say village A has 10 mango trees and village B has 8 mango trees and 2 papaya trees. So then it's more naturally abundant. So you call village B more richer than village A. So, and if you follow this notion of measuring growth through gross natural abundance, and you take it beyond village level, take it to a state level, number of butterflies that you can see, number of bumblebees, bees that you can see, number of invertebrates that you can see, a number of fishes in the pond, different kinds. So, what generally happens is that you're ensuring for your citizens of the place that you're from, good quality of air, water, and soil. So if air, water, and soil is great, you have to invest less on healthcare or, doing stuff to get people busy or happy or whatever, because naturally they are healthier. That means they are a happier state of mind. So, then this whole thing of, so why can't it be adopted as a global metric? Then I do not see anything that stops me from thinking, why can't it be? So, because of course you can have a medium of exchange, whether you call it a monetary medium of exchange or a barter system or whatever. You can, so those are still, down the line problems to solve. But the very basic notion of how do you measure growth, this started making sense, and apart from making an individual feel good, the other reason why this makes a lot of sense is because of where we are in this beautiful place that all of us call home. That's planet Earth. 2019, there was a report that I read that actually changed my life. It was called IPBES report. It was a report sanctioned by United Nations where it's very, in like plain words, mentioned that 1 million species are at a threat of extinction. What we are witnessing right now is the 6th mass extinction. And the last time that it happened was when we lost the dinosaurs. That's 65 million years ago. So what we are witnessing is unprecedented. And if we don't have time, and second, if we don't have time, then we'll have to start thinking of something radical. And I think it's about time we started measuring our growth basis, how rich you are, and how biodiverse is ecology that you're living. So if your core is sorted out, core philosophy of how do you measure growth, I think it'll be easier to solve this problem. I'm not sure whether it makes sense, because a lot of it was like,
I've been always fascinated by this idea. Also, I've been thinking about it, but I never got to put a label on it like gross national abundance, because coming from a city, being a city kid, always when I moved to rural areas, and they thought, like, of course, like, because of our privileges, they said you are like rich or whatever. But what I realized was these people are wealthy because of the clean air, the water there, the trees, the biodiversity, but we never put value to it, as you rightly said. Like, there's no liquid cash value to attach to it, like how a Gurgaon apartment would have some particular value. And since we talked a lot about numbers and rich and wealth, I am always curious about this question, like, because there is a certain notion attached to people who quit their corporate job and move to a forest or farm life. So my question to you is, how has your relationship with money changed while you were working in the corporate versus now living this life and having a bigger vision and a bigger challenge that you're working towards?
I think the idea of money from being something that you bought or something that enables you to buy something, that was what was there in the city. And that, okay, you get money to kind of buy a house or a car and do all of that stuff, and and then you think, oh, you have a family now, and you have to earn money for your child's education, and then think fast, and there's child's marriage, and so all of that. It kind of evolved now into you are getting money because you want to kind of first meet your ends. So whatever your needs are, you meet that, and whatever is there, you just reinvest the surplus back into the system. And that's as simple as that. So right now, the money that is coming in is to meet the needs. And even though there are those wishes, desire, and all of that is there, but I realized that once you make this switch to live closely to Mother Nature, there is no much greed that you fall into the trap of. So it is more of earning money to fulfill your needs rather than to fulfill your greed.
That's quite profound. And what would be your advice to people who are, just starting their permaculture journey.
All of those things, when I look back and connect the dots, make a lot of sense. So even those things that might have seemed a delay, or even those things that might have seemed challenges, now it makes sense. The delay, rather than seemingly being something that has become, that was a hindrance, now seems like a good pregnant pause that was there, that allowed you to kind of slow things down till you knew where to. So I would say it's important to kind of go and get inspired by people, places, and stuff, but do not idealize anything. And if you have to do mimicry, don't do mimicry of people or organizations. Do mimicry of Mother Nature. And also, I would say just follow your heart. So your heart is something that will never lead you astray. And also do understand that it's a journey. And yes, you may have a few goals in mind, but I think it's important to enjoy the journey. It's a very cliche thing to say, but makes a lot of sense. And do not fear to dream big, even when you are living small. I think that makes sense to me now, because initially there was this thing of, why should we kind of think of like things like a waste innovation center that would entail like a tremendous amount of capital investment and a great amount of investment of your emotional, your creative energies and all of that. But then we realized that's the need of the hour and we got to do it. So we started accepting the fact that even when you're living a small life, it's okay to dream big, and it's okay to have large goals, and it's okay to kind of, let the steam grow. And once you accept the fact that it is growth that leads to happiness, be it growth of like your creative output, or be it growth out of your relationships, or be it growth out of the community bonds that you make. But ultimately, it is growth. And that is true of what Mother Nature is also trying to teach us, right? She is abundant. She's growing all the time. So as long as you're growing, you would remain content. The moment you stagnate is when you start turning, like if you look at it, if I have to use the term, I'd say you start becoming anaerobic. So you have to kind of remain aerobic, and you have to start changing form, and quickly. So I think it's all right to kind of lead a slow life, but also think and do big stuff.
Thank you so much. That is a beautiful message to end this podcast. And this conversation has been absolutely enlightening for me, and definitely broadened my horizon on the various topics we touched. I still have like so much to talk upon too, and like definitely maybe would want to cross paths with you in near future, but I highly appreciate your time.